Hey guys, welcome to the Fairfax Sports Report. I am your host, Paul Frummel, and before we introduce the guys, let's bring it to the guys that make this show possible. Talking about our underwriters. First of all, CCI Screen Printing, 703-978-0257 for all your screen printing needs. Hey, Triple Edge Lacrosse, you can visit them online at www.tripleedgelax.com. Hey, we're on the web at www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. You can read all the great stories by Eric Gilmore, DJ Kubarulis, Paul Frummel, and Dave Buschenfeld. Check us out, www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. As I said, I am your host, Paul Frummel of the Connection Newspapers, alongside of Eric Gilmore of the Connection Newspapers and Dave Buschenfeld of the Fairfax County Times. We have a lot of great spring sports action to get to, but first we have a bit of news and notes, a big change in the redistricting and reclassification to start in 2009, and I believe, Dave, you've been on this story from the start.
I have been. The VHSL R&R committee held their meeting on Monday down in Charlottesville, and both Stonebridge and Hayfield won their appeals, meaning that beginning in 2009-2010, Hayfield will move from its current home in the Patriot District over to the National District, and Stonebridge will get to stay in the Liberty District. Interesting point on that, with Fairfax also moving from the Concord to the Liberty, that will give the Liberty District 9 teams, while the Concord District will only have 6. There are 2 other appeals. Loudoun Valley and Heritage both lost, and they will both be members of the Cedar Run District in the Northwest region.
Mm-hmm. One thing you have to look at, because I know some people disagree with what's going on, some people agree. I think that 9 teams in the Liberty District, that just doesn't work. You're trying to make things competitive. When you have 9 teams, things can't be competitive.
Yeah, it does seem a little odd to me as well, but what you have to realize is at the last meeting, the committee voted to have Stonebridge, Loudoun Valley, and Heritage all move to the Northwest region. And when that was happening, they allowed Fairfax to move, thinking it would only be 8. Mm-hmm. But at the latest meeting, now Stonebridge is getting to go back to the Liberty, and they don't want to move Fairfax back out of there because that would be unfair to them.
Well, that's the problem. We all enjoy covering the Concord District because it's so good, always one of the best districts in the state. But guys, when no one wants to join the district now, only 6 schools, how do you fix this, Eric?
I mean, that's the thing is you have to get your priorities in line, mm-hmm. from the not necessarily from the R&R committee, but from a region standpoint. Which way do you want to do it? Do you want to do it from the geographic standpoint? Mm-hmm. Do you want to put the closest schools next to each other? Do you want to do it from a pure enrollment sense and put the best schools with the biggest students next to each other? Or do you want to do it from a competitive sense and still trying to keep the rivalries? Obviously, the fact that there's 30 schools, that's an even amount. You divide that by 4, obviously there's going to be some unevenness. But at the same point, to have 9 schools in one district, 6 in the other, I'm not good at math, but that just simply doesn't add up.
And Dave, I remember an earlier proposal would put Stonebridge, Loudoun Valley, and Heritage in the Concord District. Geographically, it makes sense. They are smaller schools compared to the big Westfields and the Centervilles and the Chantillies. But what do you think about that proposal?
Well, that was the big reason. I was talking to Dave Hembach, the DSA over at Stonebridge. Mm-hmm. He was very happy that they're allowed to stay in the Liberty. I said, why don't you move? You're closer to the Concord District schools, move in there. But they're a very small AAA school, and they're not going to be increasing in size right now. They still compete in Division 5 in football. Most of the Liberty is Division 5. So they don't really want to go in there and get beat up by the Westfields and the Chantillies at this point.
And this has always been a problem because I remember back in the day when Broad Run, Parkview were in the northern region. You have these Loudoun schools, the majority are AA, and then when these schools bump up to AAA, they don't have anywhere to go. And they are building more schools out there in western Loudoun. So I think these Heritage, these Loudoun Valleys are going to drop back down to AA sometime soon. It's just there's no good fit for these Loudoun schools right now. But one thing that I thought it was interesting was the fact that most of these Liberty District schools voted to keep Stonebridge in. They enjoy Stonebridge in their district. Doesn't make much sense because Stonebridge is kind of taking it to them in every sport right now. But I guess any other thoughts on this?
Well, here's my thing. Is you do a line item process. The Hayfield move makes sense. I mean, that makes sense to me more so than any of the others. It made sense to the people at the regional level to vote 25-4 in favor of Hayfield, and that was a big deal to get them, and they won in a pretty decisive margin. But Stonebridge, you could debate whether that makes sense or not. But at some point, it doesn't make sense. So because you have 9 teams at once, something's got to give. I mean, we could sit here and divvy up certain schools and put them in power conferences, but you're going to have to get your priorities in line. Do you want it from a geographic sense, or do you want it to keep old traditions together, or do you want it from a pure enrollment sense? And right now, the Northern Region simply doesn't have the answer to that question.
Well, I think right now, I mean, we can argue about this. Everybody has their great idea of what we want, but the Northern Region, the redistricting and reclassification committee, I mean, they're doing what's best for the kids. They take travel times into effect. They take competition into effect. And one thing that I see is you mentioned it, there's two ways. There's geographic, and then there's capacity for the schools. And originally, they just did capacity when they did the last redistricting, but they've changed that around now. I believe Langley's a Division 6 school now. I believe Woodson's a Division 6 school now. It was Patriots Division 6, Concord's Division 6. The other two are Division 5 when we were talking about football. And that's gone away. I think, why not jump into geographic? Fairfax and Woodson, right now, that's going to change. But Fairfax and Woodson, they're geographic rivals. They're not in the same district. Robinson and Lake Braddock, that's not going to change. They are geographic rivals. They're not in the same district.
Well, I talked to Carol Calloway, one of the dissenting opinions, the first-year DSA over at Washington and Lee, and that was the voice of the four schools. And it being Falls Church and the three Arlington schools, Washington, Lee, Yorktown, and Wakefield, they said, look, we got to do this by geographics. I mean, look at gas. Gas is out $3.50 a gallon right now. I mean, this is we're in a budget crunch, both in Arlington County and Fairfax County. Why make these schools drive 16.5 miles? And that's not a pleasant 16.5 mile trip from Yorktown to Mount Vernon. That could take upwards of 45 minutes. I mean, trying to do that with your girls lacrosse team, with your boys lacrosse team. I mean, there's so many teams. This is not just football. That they said, hey, we need this from a geographic sense. But at the same point, that to me doesn't make sense, because you've got Hayfield sitting right next to some of these premier schools in Division 6. And if they were doing this by a geographic gerrymandering type deal, then Hayfield just couldn't compete, and that was the case in the Patriot.
Definitely.
Well, the committee tried to do it by geography when they put Stonebridge, Loudoun Valley, and Heritage all in the Northwest region, but all the schools said, hey, you don't have to do that, because Heritage and Loudoun Valley wanted to come back into the Northern region. Stonebridge said, we never wanted to move in the first place, just leave us alone. So that's the way it ended up.
Well, and on another thing, Robinson moving out of the Patriot District, to me, really messed that district up.
A while ago.
Yeah, and that happened a while ago. And at the same time, you look at West Potomac right now. They're in the Patriot. Well, with the way things have shaken out, it would make a lot of sense for them to be in the National from a geographic sense, aside from the Arlington schools. So there's a lot of slicing and dicing that could go on and continue. And I think it's never going to be a perfect marriage. No. But right now, to have 9 in one and 6 in the other, no matter what the type of schools they are or the premier names, is simply just not adding up.
After they decided not to do the geography with the Loudoun schools, it came down to region balance. And if Heritage and Loudoun Valley hadn't been in the Northwest District or Northwest region, I think they only would have had 22 schools against 32 for the Northern region. I think the Eastern region has something like 36 schools, and they just wouldn't be balanced. So they needed to have a couple of schools going in there to even things out.
Yeah, we're talking about the competitiveness between teams in the district. We're talking about competitiveness between regions at the state level, and that really hurts the Northwest region with this heavy Northern region right next to them.
Well, you have to think, going, and I hate to cut you off there, but going back to the regional level and even at the district level, I mean, the Division 5 and the Division 6 playoffs expanded this past year, and it makes Hayfield a lot easier to get into any region playoffs when you've only got to beat, several weak teams. I mean, Stewart doesn't have much. Falls Church doesn't have much with respect to athletics, so you really have to beat 4 schools. That's not hard to do. So, I mean, it helped Hayfield out. They didn't have a chance in the Patriot District to make it to any region playoffs, to host a regional playoff game. Now they have that chance, and there may be some money in the pockets in the long term in terms of gate receipts.
Kids are going to want to come out. I know from experience covering Fairfax and myself going to Fairfax, when they moved to the Concord District, they stopped being competitive, and now kids don't really want to be on a 0-10 football team. They don't come out. Kids start coming out, and it's a whole downward spiral. And getting the team in the right district really makes a difference when you're talking about competitive sports.
Well, I'm talking to Hayfield DSA Steve Cure. He was saying when South County opened up, they only thought they would be losing a couple hundred kids here and there. They ended up losing over 1,000 kids from that school, and when that happened, their athletic program just kind of went down the tubes. And he said if he had known originally that they would lose that many kids to South County, he would have asked to move 3 years ago when the school ended up opening up.
And that's another thing. We talked about team morale. You look at Appalachian State, go and win several Division 1AA now football playoff division, whatever it's called now. That has completely helped their enrollment of their school. I mean, Steve Kewer said the same thing. Martin Grimm, the DSA over at Edison, he said when you have a winning program, there's just something about the hallways and the kids, the attitude towards the school, even an alumni base. The fact that these schools are excited about athletics, and and if you're in the right district, you're able to win. But if you're not, Falls Church, Stewart, among others, you just don't have a chance, and no one wants to come back to your school.
All right, guys, we could talk about this forever. Obviously, we're all pretty opinionated about this. We've been following it for a long time, but we're going to jump into just a few other news and notes before we get to the action-packed spring sports that we have, 2 weeks worth of great spring sports action. But I got one little note on Chantilly basketball. We're going to jump back to the winter for a little bit. Chantilly Girls basketball coach John Kelly has stepped down after 10 years as the Chantilly Girls head coach. He cited family reasons. He lives in Front Royal, and he's had 3 kids since he's started coaching at Chantilly. He's kind of missing their adolescence, so he stepped down. Chantilly's in the preliminary process of trying to send out feelers, try to get a new head coach, but definitely it's tough to lose a great coach like John Kelly, Dave. Yeah,
with Kelly and Jim Smith on the boys' side, they have 2 of the most respected basketball coaches in the region, so it's going to be tough to replace him.
And they really worked well together. They very close together. They drew up plays together. They checked each other's practices to give tips. So Jim Smith is going to have to start a brand new bond with another girls coach here coming up real soon.
And we're on the front end of the coaching, hiring, and firings. Washington Lee and Michelle Miller, we talked about her, the travel, the girls coach. She has resigned. They're actively looking for a job. Wakefield, Devon Drayton was there for a couple of years. I talked to Tony Bentley actually, I think on Friday. He said whoever comes in is going to have to completely overhaul their girls program. They really struggled, and that's going to be a tough job for anybody who comes in and steps in that position. But at the same point, 2 Arlington schools, 2 jobs open.
All right, guys, we're going to jump out of the notebook here. And one more quick note: Centerville basketball player Drake Diamond has signed with has committed to Wheaton College, and he was a great player for the Wildcats, and so we wish him luck at the next level.
Yeah, also Anthony Winbush, and we talked about his recruiting ad nauseum. He's going down to East Carolina this weekend. He will go to LaSalle after that. Counts Loyola still among his schools. Travis Berry also getting some interest from East Carolina as well as Longwood.
All right, guys, let's jump right into spring sports. We got boys soccer, and we're going to have Herndon head soccer coach Sean Lanigan on the phone here in a couple minutes. But let's kind of break down what's going on, Dave, in this Concord district. It's been nuts with Robinson, Westfield, Herndon, the 3 top-tier teams all fighting it out.
Definitely. When you talk about boys soccer, you got to start with Westfield, though. Currently 6-0-1. They just had a big win over Yorktown, who's the best team in the national district. 5 of their 6 wins this year have been shutouts. So you always think about their offense. I think they've scored 26 goals in their 7 games, but their defense has been putting up zeros all season long, which has been pretty impressive.
And definitely Westfield had a tie with McLean, who is assisted coach by Fairfax Sports Network regular Mirza Kursmihik from back in the day. He's the assistant coach there over at McLean, so I got to give a shout out to him. But that's really the only blemish Westfield has right now, a quick tie with McLean. And then Herndon, on the other hand, they just lose to Robinson in a close game. And so we see the balance shift there. But then it comes back and Robinson almost loses to Fairfax. Me and Dave, we were at that game. Robinson drops down quickly, 0-2, and then comes back and scores 3 in the second half.
Yeah, well, talking to Robinson players after the game, they were saying, after the big win over Herndon, they probably took Fairfax a little bit too lightly, but they brought it on in the second half, scored 3 unanswered goals to pull out that win.
Right, guys, we have a person that really knows the Concord district, Herndon head coach Sean Lanigan. Coach, are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you.
Well, Coach, we're just trying to break down right now the Concord district, the top 3 teams, yourself, Robinson, and Westfield. It's certainly been a fun ride for us watching. It's been a fun ride for you guys playing.
Yeah, it's been a real good start for us. And, like most everybody wants to go, it's coming down to the end of the season when everybody's playing in form. We'll see how we all play out. Robinson, Westfield, and us, we all play down the next week and a half or something like that. So.
Coach, tell me why your team is – I'm going to put you on the spot here. I'm going to go ahead and preface that. Coach, tell me why your team is going to win the Concord District, and then tell me on the flip side why your team could lose the Concord District.
We're going to win it because we are the best team in the region.
Hey, I like hearing that, Coach.
We have the best midfield. I think we're most potent offense. Even though we fell up short with Robinson, I don't think it's going to happen again for us. On the flip side, how we can lose it, Robinson has the best defense probably in the region I've seen so far. And if they stick to a game plan to try to really snuff us out again, they could potentially get forward and get the goal they need, one goal, and just defend it.
Coach, you talked about your great midfield. Obviously, Sean Murnane, the transfer from Westfield, and then Christian McLaughlin. Just talk about the chemistry that they have together and what they've meant for the team so far this year.
You can't teach chemistry from the club system. These guys have played with each other since probably they're 10, 11 years old, and so they know each other's instincts. One's run away, the other one has the ball before Christian even has the ball. He sees Sean running. He receives the ball, first touch, he's able to play Sean in fast. It's hard to teach that in a short amount of time in high school, especially all these guys come from different backgrounds. So that's a bonus for us coming into that. We're clicking right off the bat. We don't have to really develop it after a month of training.
Now, Coach, with that Robinson loss, you came back and you took it to Washington Lee. You won 4-1. What did you tell your kids after the Robinson loss, and did you have to say anything to them?
No, I think they knew it all. They were very disappointed in their performances. They knew, my high-profile players knew they played subpar in that game. And, they know that the young kids are looking forward to these guys performing week in and week out. I told them it's just one game. It's a good test for us as the first real competitive game we've been into. And that, it comes down to, we've been scoring 3 to 4 goals a game, but we've been getting 15 to 20 to 25 chances a game. Robinson, you're going to get 3 or 4 or 5 chances, and you've got to learn to be able to put away the chances that we create.
Now, Coach, talking about Sean and Christian, I was at a game earlier this year where they combined for something like 4 goals. When you said to the team afterwards that against a team like Robinson, some teams are going to be able to shut them down and you need the other guys to step up, have you seen that from the other players?
That's what we had last night. When we were missing Annandale in the Robinson game. Annandale came back last night. He was the most valuable player in the field last night. He scored a goal, he created a goal, and he set up the other 2 goals indirectly. So, that's something we've been talking about. Last night, we had 4 different people score. Christian and Sean each got a goal, but we got a goal from Joe too, and we got a goal from Annandale. And, that's what we've been talking about. We can't rely on Sean and Christian. They are going to be stopped. They are going to be focused by every team is going to be focused to shut them down. And we have to have the players around them step up and create chances and finish off chances. So that's what we've been working on.
Coach, piggybacking on that thought, which players stepped in and given you a surprise this year, and which player you're going to have to count on other than your top 2 players for y'all to make a run in the region?
Anatol is definitely going to have to play at the level he played last night. The first 4 or 5 games, he's kind of hidden in the midfield and really hasn't stepped up his dominance. I know him as a player here in McLean, and he has that capable, ability to play just as hard, just as well as Christian does. But he's kind of been in his shadow there. And then Saul, our center back, he's going to have to be extremely smart for us to go far in the region. He's another, good player out here in McLean, but he has a tendency to make kind of silly mistakes on us. And he's going to have solid performances and really try to rally the outside backs with him to perform, to their ability, and actually probably above their ability enough for it to win the region.
Coach, you got Westfield on the 28th of this month, but you have 2 games before that. How do you try to keep your kids focused on the next 2 games and not looking ahead to that big matchup against Westfield?
We're not even looking at Westfield right now. We're trying to solidify the number 1 seed in the district, and that takes care of, Oakton tomorrow first. Then we have Wakefield next week. We're really not going to focus too much on that. We'll be planning for the Westfield game by next week. I've seen them play enough. I'm going to go watch them play. Next Monday they play Robinson. So I'll be at that game, and we're going to have to develop a game plan next week and just try to get through the Wakefield game.
Coach, talk about what this season is like for you. For those who don't know, You know, you coached at Herndon from 1996 to 2000, won 2 region titles. Took a little bit to get you back this year. I know you have a lot of other coaching commitments, but what's it been like coming back to the old school?
It's always a pleasure. You know, I love the staff at Herndon, and it was hard coming in just to a team who I didn't know any players. You know, before when I was 96, I was a JV coach in 95, so, you know, coming in, you know the players on the varsity, and, you know, you feel a little more comfortable. Here, I came in cold feet. I didn't know anybody. I didn't want to know anybody. In tryouts, I wanted to pick my own team. I didn't want to know if you played last year or not. And so, you know, it's been a ride just to get to know the fellas a little bit, but it's been very enjoyable. They're turning out to be a great bunch of kids. They're very dedicated. They have the ambition to win the region, and they want to go to states, and, you know, they're working towards it.
Herndon head coach Sean Lanigan, one of the top teams in not only the Concord District, but one of the top teams in the region. Coach, thanks a lot for joining us, and we'll catch up with you again real soon.
Thank you very much. Talk to you guys later.
I saw the quote I just love is we'll win the district because we're the best team in the region. I like that confidence at this level because it rubs off on the kids.
Well, you asked Robinson if they're the best team in the region. I mean, Robinson beat them. Yorktown tied them. You know, I understand that the coach wants to get to rally the troops, so to speak, and get the boys fired up. But at the same point, sometimes that comes back to bite you in the end.
Well, I kind of like that. You need that mentality to win sometimes. You know, I covered them at the beginning of the year before they'd even played a game for the preview. And I'm like, you know, what are some of your goals talking to the players? Every single one of them are like, we're going to win the state title. You know, setting the bar high. They think they can do it, and we'll have to wait and see.
Westfield, a quick note, they did beat Yorktown 2-0 earlier in the season. So that's a tie for Herndon. So that's going to be a great game on the 28th, and another great game next Monday when Robinson and Westfield play.
Yeah, and Coach was saying when we were just talking to him that he thought Robinson was the best defense that they'd seen. I think Westfield might wake him up and show that they're the best defense. As I said before, you know, 5 shutouts. They got the guys, I think, that can match up with the Sean Renanes and the Christian McLaughlins. It should be interesting to watch those matchups.
Westfield does know how Sean Renane plays as well, as Renane played for the Bulldogs last year. One team that no one's really talking about when we're talking about all these Concord teams is Stonebridge. They're putting together quite a season themselves, having a great year. Dave, do you think Stonebridge can knock off one of these Concord teams?
I think they could. They're 7-0 right now, one of the last undefeated teams left. They got a lot of firepower. I don't think they've played any of the Concord teams, to my knowledge, but they'll surely meet them in the region tournament, and it should be a good game.
Any team do you think could possibly compete for a region title here?
I mean, you think Yorktown would be one of those teams. Alex Herrera, a standout player, but at the same time, they've lost to Thomas Jefferson. You just mentioned their previous loss, and you know, and tied Herndon. So you know, they've been battle tested, but at the same point, they haven't got that marquee win yet.
And I'm going to do a BJ transition. And we're battle tested here, and we're going to switch right over to boys lacrosse. And West Springfield and Lake Braddock had a heck of a game with West Springfield taking an early 5-1 lead. And into halftime, Lake Braddock comes storming back. And we got some highlights here that we'd like to show you of that great game.
A huge upset here. Lake Braddock storms back after falling behind 5-1 at the half and takes an 8-7 victory. Woody Kidd was huge tonight with 4 second-half goals on B.J. Kubarulis alongside of Phil Palazzati, and it was all West Springfield in the first half.
Yeah, Alex Caldwell with the first goal for Braddock. Then West Springfield storms back after that.
Stephen Vu with 2 early goals in the first quarter, and Bragg, number 2, right there you see him in your screen. He scored 2 quick goals in the first quarter. That one on a bounce shot right past Will Peabody, who was big in the second half.
Yeah,
we'll get to that in just a moment, but here's Bragg on back-to-back goals here on the Fairfax Sports Network Rewind. And then another huge goal there by Vu, who hit that buzzer beater to take us to a 5-1 lead at the half.
Yeah, the Spartans' attack just totally dominated the Bruins' defense in that first half, and with Schauder and Vu. And, you know, the second half, completely different story.
Well, the second half was where the big kid, Woody Kidd, came to life with 4 goals. They outscored West Springfield 7-3 and did not allow the Spartans a goal in the fourth period. Woody Kidd was the man rallying this squad, taking them on his back.
Yeah, he was phenomenal. I think he went into the huddle at halftime and said, I'm going to put you on my back and just go, and that's what it looked like out there. And the Bruins just came back. They did what they had to do. Coach Price hit the nail right on the head. One at a time. You can't do it all at once.
That
That's
was a
great
huge shot.
That's an incredible shot.
That was
right
Alex
there.
Caldwell to
Yeah.
cut the score to 6-3.
Yeah, and he's got a cannon. And, McGregor made those saves, made a lot of good saves, and a couple of them snuck by. That's a
McCray
great
was
shot
the
right
lone
there.
goal there in the third quarter. Actually, Mike Barry also scored
Right.
for West Springfield. He brought that lead up to 7-3 at the 4:59 mark, but then West Springfield did not score for the rest of the game after that Mike Barry goal.
Yeah, and the
third period.
Bruins made an adjustment defensively, and it seemed to have paid off with the personnel.
Here's Woody Kidd, the lefty. Got very creative, and look at this shot right off the hip.
Wow.
Absolutely gorgeous. That was really what got him kick-started, and he just went on a terror. But both goalkeepers, we got to give it up for both goalkeepers today. Lake Braddock's Will Peabody and McGregor from West Springfield, both in double-digit saves. But this one, an unbelievable goal for Woody Kidd.
Yeah, he was under control coming out of the dodge, like I said, and he just made a great shot.
And we didn't even
the
talk
game
about
winner.
Loria.
The
Loria
game
goes
winner.
to his feet and scores the game winner here from his backside to give the Bruins a huge upset victory. You see Ryan Loria there, one goal for the young sophomore, but it was the one that gave the Bruins a huge victory. This one going to decide a lot of postseason implications, and our Monica Moore got a chance to catch up with Loria and Woody Kidd after the game.
I'm here with our co-players of the game, Woody Kidd and Ryan Loria, and Victoria's Coach Price. And Ryan, first I have to ask you, what was going through your mind when you shot that last shot?
I just picked up the ball, and right away I just thought to shoot. I didn't even look at the time. I just picked it up and shot, and I guess we got the win.
And Woody, your team played very well during the second half. What were you guys thinking about coming back from being behind at halftime?
All about hustle. We had to win off hustle. We were out hustled the first half, and that's what won us the game.
And Coach Price, I have to ask you, because I'm sure everyone is wondering, what exactly did you say to these guys at halftime to get them to come back like this?
I said to them that they got to chip away one goal at a time. Don't try to do the whole thing all at once. And the big change we made was we took Woody off attack and made him a midfielder. And it was a huge difference in the game because they couldn't cover him at the midfield. And I think would you have 5 tonight, Woody? 4. And they were crucial goals. And it was just one at a time, and that's the way you play the game. And of course, we were sloppy in the first half.
Well, a wonderful game tonight. Congratulations on a huge win to you all.
Thank you.
All right, guys, so Lake Braddock getting another big win. They've won of their 9 games this year, 7 of them have been by 2 or less goals decisions. So they're playing real close, and I had a chance to talk with Steve Price actually before the West Springfield game, and he mentioned to me about how he has so many football players on the team. Right now they have 11 football players that played football last fall on the team this year, and he believes he's also a football coach, and he believes that while the skills aren't the same, it's the athleticism that works out really well. And Judd Gates, Joey Belcher, Kyle Merrill, the 3 main guys in the defensive nucleus there are all great football players. So Lake Braddock right now is doing a great job, and those highlights bring us right into the Triple Edge Lacrosse Report, sponsored by Triple Edge Lacrosse, of course. And we're going to jump right into the rankings. And as you see, Dave, right there at the top, Chantilly still there, undefeated.
Yeah, it's all Concord up at the top again, as usual. Number 1 is Chantilly. They're 8-0 right now, have 140 points. They're playing number 2 Oakton on April 22nd. That should be a heck of a game. Chantilly just has too many weapons. They got 16 seniors on the team. You got Tyler Ott, Ian Mills, Joe Fratter, Jake Nolan. It's too many to list. They have a lot of firepower. Should be a good game. Langley's sitting there at number 3. Then you got the 2-time defending state champion Robinson Rams at 4. Chantilly actually beat Robinson for the first time in school history earlier in the season. That was a big win for them. And number 5 is Westfield.
And guys, we're going to have Chantilly head lacrosse coach Kevin Broderick on the phone real soon, but let's just jump right back into the rankings. You see there Madison and Woodson, 2 of the better Liberty District teams right there at number 6 and number 7. Woodson, you see there, the record's a tad different, though it's actually correct on the screen. 3-3 right now. They started out pretty tough against tough opponents, but they've come back and now they're score 3-3.
Yeah, rounding out the top 10, the 3 Patriot schools. West Springfield, we'll talk to the Chantilly coach in a minute. A horrible loss right there, the way they lost, and then at the same time, really got pounded by Chantilly earlier in the season. But Annandale, West Springfield, and Lake Braddock rounding out our top 10.
And when we talk about Chantilly, they're right there at 8-0. Such dominating wins recently: 14-0 over Herndon, 16-0 over Fairfax. And while I name out these scores, Coach Kevin Broderick is on the phone. And Coach, you guys really have been rolling. I remember when I talked to you earlier before the season started, and I was telling all this preseason hype, and you said, "Well, we don't worry about that. You guys are doing pretty well." So, are you still worrying about the hype that you guys have?
There's a little bit of pressure, no doubt about it. But again, we're still going back to taking it one game at a time, and we've got a giant game tomorrow against one of the best teams in the region, hosting Westfield. So we're just focusing on them and seeing if we can play our game and continue to improve.
Coach, we're here about getting to the latter portion of the season. I'm going to ask you the same coach that asked the Herndon boys soccer coach. Tell me why your team can win the region and will win the region. And then on the flip side of that, tell me why your team maybe might not win the region title.
I think you're ahead of me. Again, I'm still looking to play Westfield tomorrow and take it one game at a time. That's what I'm trying to get my team to focus on, getting better each day as a player and as a team, and coming together. We hope to be able to play in late May and early June, and that's our goal, clearly. But if we don't win these games, then it determines seeds and everything else from there, from a district perspective. And so, any good club that plays together as a team, and we're certainly stressing the unselfish part of our game. We got to. We've had our little bit of share of nicks and knacks and injuries and things like that, and that's going to be the key going forward, I think. Keeping the guys motivated. It's a beautiful day out here today, practicing-wise, and, I got a senior-dominated club, so right now they're enthused, they're interested, and they're working hard, and if we continue to get better each day, I think we got a shot to win the region, yes. Something we've never done. In fact, we've never won a district, so we have to start first.
Coach, you mentioned the senior class. You have 16 seniors on the team this year, a lot of leaders. Talk about the interesting way you let all of them be captains each game.
Again, yeah, I appreciate that. The guys, they all pick it up each day. They encourage each other. So there are many coaches out there during the practice. And I'll give you an example. They had a team dinner tonight, and I got a call here. I'm out scouting the game. And one of my guys calls me and says, "Coach, I need to tell you about dinner." And right away I'm like, "Oh my goodness!" And he tells me, he says, "The lady sitting behind us at the restaurant wanted to see the coach," and he says, "Well, I'm one of the captains. Can I help you?" And she says, "I've never seen a group of guys out there who handle themselves as well as you guys have." And I'm like, "Wow, that's fantastic." So I think that's just an example for you of the kids doing their best and knowing the right things to do, and a compliment to their parents, clearly. But they know what's at stake, and they know that we've stressed this long and hard that at today's age that they got to be role models both on the field, in the classroom, and outside of school.
Coach, when you guys were able to get past Robinson 13-10 earlier on in this season, I know you still had tough games ahead with Centerville, Fairfax, and Herndon. How did you keep them focused on the next game and not get ahead of themselves and start getting overconfident that they just beat the Rams?
I appreciate that question. It's a very good question. It's something that we, my staff, really worked hard on, and we gave them specific goals that we wanted to accomplish each game. And whether it was to shut down a particular player or reduce our turnovers or get our clearing percentage or our riding percentage against the opponents, and that's what we played to, not just the uniforms on the other side of the field. We tried to get ourselves better and work on that part of our game that we didn't think we did as well against Robinson, and cut down the penalties, the turnovers, those kind of things, and improve our assists and things like that. So I'll give you an example. In the Herndon game, 13 out of those 14 goals were assisted. And then I think that makes a big statement.
Coach, talk about your offensive philosophy. You got a lot of guys that can score goals, but you like to try and get some assists in there as well.
Absolutely. We talk about one more, and one more pass, one more ground ball, one more hustle, whatever it may be. And there are a couple of those goals I know against Fairfax just before the half we scored, and a gentleman was wide open on the crease, and he didn't take the shot. He looked for his partner across the crease for an easy dink. The goalie never had a chance. And those kind of plays where you're giving up your opportunity because you know it's better for the team. And I'll give you an example. One of our guys, Jake Nolan, he's a senior. He's going to go play at Providence next year. He was honorable mention All-Region last year, one of our leading scorers. This year, he's leading the team in assists. He's got over 21, 22 assists through 8 games. Last year was a leading goal scorer. Now he's created, and he's making everybody better every time he steps on the field. And he probably could have had 10 or 12 more if we had caught the ball, quite frankly. So guys like that are role leaders for us that they step up, and the young guys see that and say, wow, he's being unselfish. We can all do this.
Chantilly head coach Kevin Broderick has his Chargers out to a 8-0 start, a big game against Westfield tomorrow night. Coach, best of luck against the Bulldogs, and thanks for being on the show.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it and everything you guys do for covering lacrosse.
Coach,
Thanks,
thanks so much. Well, and you had it right there. Broderick has his kids grounded. They stick to the next game, and that's why they've been so successful so far, also with that senior leadership. But we're going to jump right out of boys lacrosse right now. We're going to take a break, let you guys take a breath, relax, because we're coming right back with girls lacrosse and Monica Moore. Fairfax Sports Report. Again, I am your host, Paul Frummel, alongside of Monica Moore, and we're still in that Triple Edge lacrosse report, this side on the girls, or this time on the girls side. And Monica, let's break down the top 10 standings for the girls, starting with, hey, surprise, Chantilly at 7-0.
Absolutely. You guys just talked about how the Chantilly boys are at the top of the list, also the Chantilly girls at the top of the list, and there's no surprise there. They have started off the season with a perfect 7-0. They are winning all their games, and they are dominating them. On the season so far, they've scored 105 goals. Their opponents in total have only scored 32 goals. And when you ask Coach Michelle Gates what it is, why her team's winning all these games by so many goals, she says it's 2 things. It's hard work and conditioning. They spent a lot of time during the off-season working on conditioning, and it's paying off for them now. Their top goal scorer, Brittany Grill, who was all-region last year, she also handles their face-offs, and they're also getting a lot of help from Katie Stillwell. Chantilly having this great season so far, but have a huge matchup tomorrow night against Westfield. Westfield also got off to a great start this season, 7-0, but they've lost their last 3 games to Robinson, Broad Run, and Langley. But you absolutely should not count them out. You see them there at the number 4 position in our rankings. They've lost all 3 of those games by just 1 goal. They're a really strong team, and I think that's going to be a great game tomorrow night in the region. And then also on our last episode, I talked about Oakton. They lost to Westfield, which somewhat sent some shockwaves through the region after Oakton's dominance the past 2 seasons. But talk about righting the ship. On Friday night against Centerville, they won 22-1. The Cougars had 10 different ladies scoring goals. They were led by last year's Northern Region Player of the Year, Ashley Kemner. She had 5 goals, also got goals from lots of different players in that game. And when you look at the score, you know, it's 22-1, but another player that you have to give a lot of credit to is the Centerville goalkeeper, Carolyn Masick. She had 25 saves, so she actually saved over 50%, but Oakton took 46 shots on the night.
And you can see, Monica, just sitting there at number 6 is Annandale. I know Annandale just had a big win against Barbara Mahoney's South County squad. How has Annandale been able to have such a great start?
Well, they have, Paul, you hit it right on the head. They have started out to 5-0 in the Patriot District. There are only 2 losses on the season to Bishop O'Connell. And last night against South County, it was a close game at halftime. They were only up by 1 goal. But then in the first 2 minutes of the second half, they got 2 quick goals and just opened up the game. They're playing really well. There were 8 different Adams that scored in that game. And that's a really strong South County team. They've been playing really well this season. And I think one reason that might explain South County's loss is just fatigue. They hosted their first tournament ever this past weekend. They played 5 games in the tournament, and while they lost to Jefferson, they had some big wins over Woodbridge, Deep Run, Marshall. So South County really playing well, not a team that you're going to want to count out this season.
Not to mention playing those 5 games, but planning for the tournament. They had no idea how to set up an outdoor tournament. They've done South County has done some tip-off tournaments before, and they've done with girls basketball, but this is their first big outdoor tournament. And a main reason, talking to Coach Mahoney, is she mentioned that Fairfax County Public Schools can only have 11 games, but if they enter a invitational tournament, they can bump it up to 14. And so that she couldn't find a tournament, so they set one up themselves. And you can see that fatigue was really weighing on them because the girls were making the posters and helping design the program. So it was a big team effort there, and it probably hurt them a little bit in their next game.
It probably did, but I think that experience is going to be huge for them as they come into the postseason. They're led by Cassie Nelson, and my Q&A this week on the website is with Cassie if you want to check that out. And she talks about that tournament a little bit and planning for it. But finally, closing out the segment this week, one more team that you have to talk about is Stonebridge. They had a huge upset on Monday night. Some may not call it an upset. Stonebridge is playing so well this year. They defeated Woodson 12-11. And their offensive firepower that's been coming up big for them all season was huge that night. Lauren Giussi had 3 goals and 2 assists. Also Megan DiMartino, 2 goals, 2 assists. Michelle Leon coming up with 8 saves. That Stonebridge team is really good. Certainly a team you're going to want to keep your eyes on as we move into both district and region tournament play.
Monica Moore, again, a fantastic segment. You definitely have the information on girls lacrosse. Guys, we're going to take another quick break. We're going to bring the guys back. We're going to jump into softball. But again, Monica Moore, thank you very much. All right, guys, welcome back to the Fairfax Sports Report. Just resetting real quick. I'm your host, Paul Frummel of the Connection Newspapers, alongside Eric Gilmore of the Connection Newspapers and Dave Buschenfeld of the Fairfax County Times. We're going to jump right into softball, and we're going to start in the Concord District yet again. Again, you have Big 3, Big 2. It's turning into the Big 3 in the Concord. You have Herndon and Centerville going at it, and Centerville getting a 2-0 win over the Hornets. Dave, you have some info on why Herndon may have lost.
Yeah, well, their top pitcher, Katie Reinex, has a broken right ankle and has missed the last couple of weeks. They're hoping to possibly get her back for the end of the season, but again, she's a right-handed pitcher who's a right ankle, the foot she pushes off with, so even if she comes back, she might not be able to pitch. But in her stead, Katie Briggs, another senior, took over, pitched a great game, only allowed 3 hits, 2 of them singles, but one of them happened to be a home run, and they ended up losing that game 2-0 in a matchup of probably the top 2 teams in the region.
And guys, the Hornets had only a loss to Battlefield. They had not lost to a region opponent until matching up with Westfield before Centerville. They've dropped 2 games straight in the Concord District, so that's always tough to try to bounce back from that. Losing 2 games, that hurts, but losing 2 district games in a row, so let's hope Katie Reinex heals up quickly because she's definitely a stud for them. And Eric, we're going to shift gears here, talk a little about West Potomac softball. What do you got for me?
Well, I wrote an interesting feature on the team. Last year, right at senior day, a well-publicized event, but 4 girls died. 2 seniors had just graduated 6 hours beforehand, and another girl that was still part of the school and was going to attend next year. And one of the members was Renee Shelkin that died in that car crash, and she was a part of the softball team. Ended up becoming a manager later in the season, but West Potomac has had to deal with that. Granted, she was a senior and she had almost left the program, but at the same point, that's not easy to deal with that type of tragedy, especially with how close this team is. So Tanya Rodman has come in. And right now, that team has won 3 games in a row, beat Lake Braddock 7-0, beat Annandale 8-0, and last night beat Lee 11-0. So 3 straight shutouts within the district. The team is on a roll after opening up the district with a loss to Hayfield.
Eric, I want to jump back into Centerville real quick. We were talking about them. They recently lost to O'Connell, a team that you know quite a bit about. Tell me, why do you think O'Connell was able to top Centerville, and what does that say about Centerville? What does that say about O'Connell?
O'Connell has 2 great seniors, Colleen Carty and Devin Metcalf. But at the same point, they're still trying to figure some things out because they've got so many other people. But O'Connell is the premier program. Tom Orndorff, the Virginia Shamrocks. People are in the softball circles. They know his name because he's a legend in this area with respect to softball. O'Connell's just a better team. I mean, let's put it. Let's put it out there. At the same time, O'Connell's playing almost 6 games a week because they had 1, so many games within the WCAC, but 2, they're trying to catch up with all the rain that happened a couple weeks ago.
So what does that say about Centerville then, knowing that O'Connell is that good and it was such a close game?
It says Centerville's a good team. It also says that O'Connell got the win. But I think Centerville is one of the stronger teams, and that's the exact reason why Centerville does that, because that's the type of team that they're going to see at the regional and possibly state level.
Got to give a shout out to Centerville freshman Cara Donovan. She had all 3 of those hits in that win over Hernan, including the home run.
Wow, okay, freshman getting it done.
Another team that's just been on a roll right now is a team actually pretty close to O'Connell, is Yorktown. 62-0 their last 3 games, 16-0, 17-0, 14-0. They have been blasting through the National District, who is perennially weak and has several first-year coaches. But 62-0 in 3 games, averaging a 15.5 point shutout. Is pretty darn good any way you slice it. So Yorktown's on a roll right now.
Guys, we got another pretty hot race in the Liberty District between Madison, Stonebridge, and Langley. Now, Langley was on a roll. They had just beaten Madison 9-6 in 9 innings. That was the most that they had allowed all season going against Madison in 9 innings, only 6 runs. Here comes head coach Mike Skinner and the Stonebridge Bulldogs. They beat Langley 11-7, so Stonebridge looking like in a good position there in the Liberty District. I'm sure they're glad they're staying in the Liberty District to give teams like Langley a little bit of problems.
I feel like Mike Skinner could go coach a bunch of kindergartners and get them to be a solid contender. I mean, this guy's coached everywhere, and he's got his Bulldogs believing.
He always finds success, and it's no coincidence. He's a great coach. But guys, we're going to switch paces now. We're going to jump right into baseball, and a big spring sport for all of us. We got a top 10 coaches poll we'd like to get to right here. And you see there, Oakton right at the top. Dave and myself had a chance to, I had a chance to check out Oakton wallop Chantilly. Chantilly, known for their pitching. Dave got to see Chantilly beat Forest Park with their pitching. But Oakton, discipline at the plate, getting it done, drawing 5 walks in the first 2 innings and pounding Chantilly. They're clearly the best team in the Concord District.
Well, those people that were worried about Oakton after they had that surprising loss to Westfield a couple of weeks ago, they've won 4 straight games since then, including that 10-4 win over Chantilly the other night. In that game, Kevin Wager going to Villanova, he went 3 for 4 with 4 RBIs. They took a 9-0 lead in that game before pulling off the win. Then you look at Chantilly, which was so surprising. They beat Forest Park 3-2 at Forest Park. Forest Park, one of the top teams in the state. People are picking them to possibly win a state title. They had beaten Westfield previously this season. Chantilly goes into their house, throws actually their number 4 pitcher and pulls off the win. Actually, Chantilly and Westfield are playing tonight. I'd be interested to see what the score of that game is right there. Westfield wins that game. They could clinch the number 1 seed in the district, having already beaten Oakton earlier in the year.
Real quickly, you see Stonebridge, Dave, right there at number 2. Madison down at number 5. Stonebridge, Madison, they're tussling again too.
They are playing tonight. Madison hit a bit of a tough stretch. They lost to Oakton, lost to Woodson in the final innings, but they're still 5-1 in that Liberty District. Stonebridge is 6-0. If Madison is able to beat them tonight, they'll pull into a first-place tie with them up in the Liberty.
Guys, jumping back into those top 10 rankings, you see Westfield there at number 3, Chantilly at number 4. So again, with each sport, we talk about that 3-headed monster in the Concord District. In baseball, it's Oakton, Westfield, and Chantilly. Madison at number 5. Then you have West Springfield and Lake Braddock. And Dave, you got a little bit on Lake Braddock and West Springfield.
Yeah, well, actually, South County number 8 just beat West Springfield last night. They beat him 3-1. Jesse Beal threw a complete game 2-hitter with 12 strikeouts. So I think in the next coaches poll, they'll be jumping up and switching places with West Springfield right there. Both teams now 7-4 overall and 5-1 in the Patriot District.
Well, my question is, West Springfield was undefeated, and Lake Braddock has had some tough losses. I know Jesse Beal had a great game. I think he's going to Maryland next year. But the fact is South County a better team than West Springfield? West Springfield had been running through the district thus far and was completely undefeated. I'm not sure whether we can outright say, just because Jesse Beal had a great day on the mound, that South County is the premier team in the Patriot.
Well, if Jesse Beal's on the mound, then I think that South County is a better team than they are. He's got the experience. They made a run in the postseason last year. There are other pitchers, maybe not as much, but if he's on the mound, I'll take them over almost anybody in the region.
And that adds fuel to the argument. I know I'm jumping into an argument that's been long in baseball. Let's not play just one game in the playoffs. Let's play a little bit of a series, because you see what Jesse Beal can do. If you get Jesse Beal, you might lose that game if you're a better team.
But I mean, we see it with playoff baseball. So when you get to the playoff type atmosphere with respect to the district playoffs, you're going to have more than one pitcher. And you know, South County has some arms, But at the same point, do you wait for Jesse Beal to go in the championship game when you're possibly playing a team like Lake Braddock in the semifinals? It's a question that South County is going to have to figure out. We'll see.
Yeah, jumping back in the top 10, we got the final two here with W.T. Woodson and McLean. You got two more of those Liberty District teams, Dave?
Yeah, Woodson's been a bit of a surprise this year. They're sitting at 7-4 and 4-2 in the Liberty District. As I said earlier, they beat Madison and they also beat Langley, but they've lost 2 straight games. Jacob Morley's been swinging the bat real well, but they've lost to Stonebridge and number 10 McLean in back-to-back games now. Might be hitting a little bit of a slide, but they've been a pleasant surprise so far this year.
I got a couple stats to tell you just how good Oakton and Chantilly have been. Chantilly, they've allowed 1.7 runs per game during their 7-game winning streak they had before facing Oakton. And Oakton has scored double-digit runs in 7 of their last 8 contests. So what you see here is these Concord teams, again, doing very well. I'm going to ask the same question I asked previously. Can one of these teams from the other districts beat a Concord team?
To me, I mean, you have to have premier pitching, and South County has it. I think with the Kent kid, the West Springfield has it, and with Shane Halley, a Virginia recruit, Lake Braddock has it. So in a one-game series, I think anything can happen. Top to bottom, they're not going to match up. But this is baseball, and all you need is a couple of runs, and you can move on.
Yeah, normally I would say that pitching wins the championships, but when you look at Oakton, I mean, Chantilly threw out Max Langford, one of their 3 aces on the staff this year, and they roughed him up, scored 10 runs in the game. With that lineup, they got 5 D1 recruits. That's why it was so surprising when they lost the game to Westfield, when they scored, I think, 1 run in that game. When they're swinging the bats like they can, I don't know, defending region champions, I don't know if there's any team in the region that can hang with Oakton if they're swinging the bats well.
Oakton head coach Scott Rowland, he's flat out said, he'll tell it to anybody, Westfield flat out beat them. They were a better team than Oakton on that night. Now, if they play again, we'll see what happens. But on that night, don't worry about starting pitching, don't worry about this and that. They were a better team. And you mentioned Chantilly, and they have 3 Division I pitchers. So yes, Max had a tough night. His breaker wasn't finding the strike zone. He had to resort to the fastball, and Oakton just teed off on him. But if Langsford's breaker's hitting the strike zone, they got 3 guys as well. I mean, pitching, just like defense, it wins championships.
Well, to me, baseball is a game like soccer, though, where the best team doesn't always win. I mean, in football and basketball, especially girls basketball, the best team usually wins. But baseball is not like that. All you got to do is play small ball, get a couple bunts in, some runs, and have some premier pitching, and you can move on.
Well, and then you look at Oakton. They're great at the small ball. We talked about this a couple weeks ago against Madison. Had, I think, 4 bunts, 1 for a hit, 3 sacrifices. They know how to do the little things to win as well.
Okay, guys, we're going to wrap around all sports real quick. We're going to do this real quick, rapid-fire round. Dave, who do you think, boys and girls soccer, can win the region?
On the boys' side, it's going to come down to the game 2 Mondays from now, Herndon against Westfield. The winner of that, I think, has a leg up to win the region. Right now, I'm going to go with Westfield. They're 6-0-1. They just have great defense and too much firepower and offense. With the girls, I don't know, man. It's really a toss-up. I could see any number of, maybe 4 different teams winning it this year.
I'm going to also take a cop-out on the girls' side. I haven't seen enough to basically come up to any sort of conclusion. But at the same point, Herndon coach Sean Lanigan made a believer out of me. I opened the door for the question. He said, we're going to win the darn region title. And so I'm going to have to throw my weight, if I was a betting man, which I'm not, behind the Hornets.
I'm going to say it's Rams. Rams all the way. I know we saw the Robinson boys have a tough time there against Fairfax, but they got an experienced defense and an experienced coach. I think they can go far. I'm taking the Rams. And on the girls' side, I'm taking the Rams again. I love Coach Jim Reich. I like what he's doing with the Robinson Rams right now. I'm going to take the Rams in both. Let's switch to the lacrosse real quick. Dave, just rapid fire real quick, boys lacrosse.
Chantilly.
Yeah, I have to go with Chantilly, too. I mean, they're just decimating opponents right now. And though they've never won a district title, which is somewhat surprising, I think they'll go on and get the region.
Westfield was not able to beat Robinson. I think there's some kind of mental block there, but I think they can get by Chantilly. We'll see. It's going to be a great game. I like Westfield in this. Softball.
Softball, you got to go with Centerville, especially with Rhinex out. Don't know if she's going to come back for Herndon, but Centerville's playing real well. Got that big win over the Hornets. I'd like them.
All right, Dave, go. What about baseball? I'm just going to let Dave just spew
Oakton.
it.
You got to go with Oakton the way they're swinging the bats right now. I don't
Eric
see anybody
Baseball,
standing.
what do you think?
Yeah, I have to agree with you with Oakton. I'm going to take a surprise team. I think Yorktown, even though they haven't been tested, I think they've got 2 Division I recruits, and they can make some noise at the regional level. Can they mess with some of the top teams? I think they can. I think the Patriots take it.
I'm going to do what BJ likes to do. I'm going to abstain from that last question. I'm going to let you guys sound stupid, and I'll just know it all along in my head. But guys, that's it for a show. Action-packed show. BJ Kubarulis will be back next week. I'd like to thank CCI Screen Printing, 703-978-0257. Hey, Triple Edge Lacrosse, www.tripleedgelax.com. Hey, we're on the web. Read all our stories, fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. It's a daily visit for you guys. All right, guys, again, it's a great show. I mentioned BJ has been out, but he will be back. I'm glad that he let the inmates run the asylum for a little bit. We had some fun. We talked about some spring sports, and nicely done, fellas. We'll see you all next week.